All right, you doom-scrolling TikTok fans, let me take you back in time to an era when light bulbs were just a twinkle in someone's eye. But who was that someone? Who was the guy who basically turned darkness into light? Literally, I mean, who doesn't love an electric glow? He's not a wizard, although he was called that sometimes. He's someone who revolutionized the world, but also got into his fair share of drama, controversy, and questionable decisions. Stick around because, spoiler alert, this man was not exactly the most humble genius you'll ever meet. We're talking about none other than Thomas Edison, the man who stole your ideas, the myth, the inventor who could have used a little less arrogance and a lot more sleep. Early life. School wasn't for him. Let's start from the beginning. Thomas Edison was born on February 11, 1847 in Milan, Ohio, to a family of 7 kids. Now, that's a lot of sibling rivalry, and it probably wasn't much easier for Edison, who wasn't exactly a scholar. In fact, school was a nightmare for young Tom. His teachers thought he was a little, addled, which is basically 19th century code for not the sharpest crayon in the box. They probably looked at his grades and said, "This kid's not going anywhere." Classic case of the system not knowing what to do with a genius, right? But Edison wasn't having any of it. His mom, hero of the story, took him out of school and started homeschooling him. This was probably a win for everyone involved, because as it turned out, Edison didn't just get by, he thrived. By the age of 12, he was selling candy and newspapers on a train, and by his teen years, he had become a telegraph operator. Not bad for someone who couldn't even pass basic reading and writing. This job gave him some critical hands-on experience with technology, which would later fuel his life's work in a million different ways. The phonograph and the start of the wizard. Now let's fast forward to 1877. This is when Edison started making waves with one of his most well-known inventions, the phonograph. Before Edison came along, music was something you had to experience live, with a real band and a sweaty dance floor. Edison thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could record sound and play it back? And boom, the phonograph was born. It was the first device that could both record and reproduce sound, and it was nothing short of revolutionary. Imagine hearing your favorite song 100 years before Spotify. Wild, right? Edison, though, wasn't about to rest on his laurels. This phonograph thing? Just the beginning. The man didn't just steal your ideas and invent gadgets with them. He was in it to change the world. So he started building his Menlo Park laboratory in New Jersey, what would eventually become his invention factory, where he and his team of engineers would churn out some of the most famous devices in history, the light bulb. Not as simple as you think. Yes, the light bulb. The one invention that made Edison a household name and possibly one of the few things he did that he can somewhat take credit for. But here's the thing. Edison didn't exactly invent the light bulb from scratch. Yes, he made a major contribution, but other inventors were already working on electric lighting systems, and Edison wasn't the first to create a working filament. That said, Edison was a master of improving and marketing ideas. His real genius was making the light bulb practical and ready for mass use. Before Edison's success, early attempts at lighting were either too weak, too expensive, or just too dangerous. Remember gas lamps? Edison perfected the design with his carbon filament that could last longer than the competition and finally made the electric light bulb a thing. And don't get me started on his marketing. Edison didn't just invent a light bulb, he practically sold the idea to the public. He made it seem like he'd single-handedly saved humanity from darkness. His electric light company helped push the electric light into homes and factories, and it lit up the world, for a while anyway. But here's where things start getting a little dicey. The war of currents, Edison versus Tesla. And now, let's talk about one of the most epic feuds in history, Edison versus Tesla. You probably know the basic story. Edison, a proponent of direct current, DC, had beef with Nikola Tesla, who was all about alternating current, AC. Now, for the record, AC is way better for long-distance power transmission, but Edison wasn't having it. He was already invested in DC, and you know what they say, don't mess with Edison's money. So what did Edison do? He didn't just argue about the science. Oh no, he took things way further. He started publicly electrocuting animals, yes, you heard me right, with AC to prove that it was dangerous. He even went as far as electrocute an elephant named Topsy in front of a crowd to show how deadly AC could be. This wasn't just science, it was public humiliation. So not only was Edison a mid-genius, but he was also a little bit evil. But here's the twist. Tesla's AC ended up winning. In fact, when the world's Columbian Exposition, a huge fair, was held in Chicago in 1893, Tesla's AC-powered lights were the star of the show, while Edison sulked in the background. Tesla was right, and Edison had to eat a big slice of humble pie that day. The Edison Empire, over 1,000 patents and a lot of drama. Let's give Edison some credit, though. He wasn't just a guy who fought with Tesla. He had a lot of patents to his name because Tesla cared less about patenting any of his ideas. Over 1,000 patents were either stolen or named as his own. That's right, Edison didn't just invent a few gadgets here and there. He created a patent empire. His Menlo Park lab was like the world's first invention factory, where he and his team worked around the clock, churning out ideas. And while most of his patents were big successes, he wasn't above borrowing ideas and tweaking them for his own use. But hey, who hasn't taken credit for something they didn't 100% invent, right? It's called innovation, people. But here's the thing. Edison wasn't a genius all the time. He had some epic failures, like his talking doll. Imagine buying a doll that was supposed to talk, and when it did, it made this horrible noise that scared the living daylights out of you. Yep, that was one of Edison's big flops. Also, his motion picture projector was cool, but it was more of a work in progress than anything truly groundbreaking. Legacy. The light that never dies. So even with all the feuds, the ego, and the questionable decisions, Edison's legacy is huge. Without him, we wouldn't have modern electricity as we know it. His work with the electric power grid, the light bulb, and sound recording laid the foundation for the 20th century's technological boom. And even though Tesla's AC won, Edison's DC power still has its place in certain applications today. Oh, and let's not forget that General Electric, the company Edison founded, is still a major player in the world of electrical engineering, energy, and technology that works 50% of the time. So while he may have lost the battle of currents, he definitely won the war of influence. Now let's end this with some truth. Edison was undeniably brilliant, but he was also a bit of a maniacal perfectionist who wasn't afraid to bulldoze over people to get what he wanted. Sure, he created amazing things, but he also wasn't exactly a warm and fuzzy guy. In fact, the only thing he loved more than inventing was getting credit for it. So while Tesla was busy dreaming up wireless electricity, Edison was out there making sure his name was on every light bulb. Self-promotion level 100. But hey, would we be living in a world without electricity, sound recording, or electric lights if it weren't for Edison? Probably not. The man changed the world, even if he did it in a slightly over-the-top, ruthless way. So there you have it. Thomas Edison. The man who literally illuminated the world, but not without a few sparks flying along the way. From his light bulb to his questionable business practices, Edison is a genius who knew how to change the world and get credit for it. But remember, behind the light was a guy who didn't mind stepping on a few toes to get there. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Edison's life and his occasional ego trips, hit that like button, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Who's the next historical figure you want to see roasted and praised at the same time? Let me know.